Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. Following the school committee to order. Thursday, March 9th, 2023. First order of business is the following statement regarding the recording.
Good evening. This meeting will be recorded and will be posted to YouTube and other social media platforms. By participating in this meeting, you understand that the recording could contain your video stream or your audio stream, including images of yourself or anyone in the room with you. If you choose to enable your video or audio device during the meeting, as well as anything or anyone else that may be in the background could be recorded. The recording could include any opinions you contribute and anything you say about yourself. On occasion, chat within the meeting could also be captured in the meeting recording. Therefore, anyone attending the recorded meeting may have aspects of their personal data recorded if they actively participate or not.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Dr. Allen,
Yes.
Mr. Marsh,
Yes.
Mr. Deschamps,
Yes.
Mr. Willanen,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes,
Ms. Garvey,
Yes.
Ms. Cartier,
Here.
Mrs. Chamberlain,
Yes.
Ms. Cormier,
Here.
Mr. McDonald,
yes,
Mr. Wiggler,
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson,
Yes.
Mr. Nutter,
Yes.
Mr. Jean-Francois, and Mr. Chairman.
Here. Tonight, we have two parts to our agenda. We have the school committee agenda, and we also have the public hearing perspective as well. If there's no objection, I'd like to take a couple of items out of order. One, first is the new business, the approval for a couple of trips. Then we will then go into the budget subcommittee with its update and what and a vote for a potential figure for the budget. Then we would go into the hearing.
The field trips?
Yes,
I
do the
wasn't-
field trips first.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that. Dr. Muir just told me that originally you and I had spoken.
Yeah, I thought I'd
So,
wait until the end, but
Yeah, I
are
told
they
them,
here?
no, they're
No.
not. I told them we would notify them. I was gonna send them a text when the
Okay,
public budget hearing was just about
All right.
over.
Dr. Moore just asked me.
Yep.
if I-
Yeah.
So,
And we haven't even had a chance to talk today either.
Okay.
We got our.
So-
Our signals crossed.
we'll get to the field trips after the public hearing. We'll do that for them. We'll try to get that timed if we can.
Yeah.
That'd be great. So I'd like to go to the budget subcommittee report and Mr. Wiggler.
Good evening. Before we begin the public hearing, we need to recommend to the full school committee the most recent budget figure, which was approved this past Tuesday night. Tuesday night's meeting was the second budget subcommittee meeting. The first was on January 24th, but lacked revenue figures as we were awaiting Governor Healy's revenue numbers. Our first meeting in January, without the revenue figures, resulted in a 10.4% increase over last year's figures. Tuesday's meeting resulted in a decrease of $901,338 from the first meeting for an overall increase over FY '23 of 7.96%. It'll be over this current year, a 7.9%, 9% increase. Three representatives from DESE, Department of Education, from the state level, were on the Zoom call to answer any questions or concerns. Jay Sullivan, Rob O'Donnell, and Christine Lynch attended the meeting. Several local officials were also in attendance and expressed their concerns relative to the budget and the assessment numbers. What I might want to point out is part of the process, we actually, it was actually recommended that, or proposed using $500,000 of E&D to reduce the assessment increase, which it is a concern in that E&D is sort of like our savings account, similar to free cash in the communities. But the bottom line is we felt we could use that this year, and hopefully we wouldn't run into further difficulties a year or two down the road. While fully realizing that this is not the final budget number, I will now entertain a motion to approve the revised budget number of $39,209,041 for the public hearing. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second,
Walters,
all in favor?
Have to do a roll call.
roll call.
Roll call.
Dr. Allen,
Yes.
Mr. Marsh,
Yes.
Mr. Deschamps,
Yes.
Mr. Willian,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Ms. Garvey,
Yes.
Ms. Cartier,
Yes.
Mrs. Chamberlain,
Yes.
Ms. Cormier,
Yes.
Mr. McDonald,
Yes.
Mr. Wiggler,
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson,
Yes.
Mr. Nutter,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
Motion passes unanimous.
unanimous.
We will now begin the public hearing portion of the evening. And I will turn the presentation over to Cheryl Duvall, our fiscal person, our chief fiscal person. But I'd like to mention that for those who are on Zoom, as we go through the meeting, if you put your questions or comments in the chat, we will try and address them as we go through the process. Hopefully close to a relevant portion of what your question is related to. I'll now turn it over to Cheryl.
Actually, Dr. Muir is going to start, so I don't lose my voice.
Okay,
So I am going to speak to some of the initial slides in the budget public hearing presentation to save Cheryl's voice. She has been feeling under the weather for several days, and I'm certainly happy that she's here tonight, but we'll try to take a little bit of the burden off Cheryl. So if we could put the presentation up. Go on. Yeah. Okay. So as we always do, we really try to focus on, when we develop a budget, we focus on making sure that to the best of our ability, we prepare a budget that is accountable and that has 100% transparency. And this aligns with the DESI indicators for, I can do it just in that way. This aligns with the DESI indicators related to fiscal and asset management for school districts. We want to make sure the budget is clear, comprehensive, and aligned to our goals. Also, again, related to DESI's indicators, our budget has aligned to our district and school plans, those being the school improvement and district improvement plans that are, again, aligned with our strategic plan, that we're looking at student needs as we think about how we're allocating our resources to individual schools within the district, and that stakeholders are involved in the budget development process. We've adhered to these standards for many, for always. Indicator number 2 from DESI is related to our documents and making sure, to the best of our ability, that our documents are clear and have summary statements, that we have a narrative around what our key priorities are, which you will see in a few slides, and how we are building the budget to support those priorities, that we have historical information for trend analysis, showing, sort of what's been the history of our budget development, as well as our assessments to our communities, and that we hold a public hearing, which of course is what's happening this evening. These statements here really are reinforcing what was communicated in the previous slides. We believe that our budget is aligned with our mission and vision, aligned with our theory of action, helping us meet or exceed our strategic objectives, aligned with our improvement plans, reflects our priorities, takes into consideration our data, particularly student enrollment, and is proactive rather than reactive. And we do our very best to clearly communicate to all stakeholders and make sure that our documents are always available to anyone who would like to view them or ask questions about them. As you all, as school committee members know, we are currently in the process of developing a new strategic plan. So the plan that is currently in place is what is guiding this work. But I can tell you from the work that we've been doing on our strategic plan, many of our strategic initiatives are going to be continuations. They are going to be slight modifications, but they're going to be aligned with what you see even in this budget presentation when you see the new strategic plan. So of course, our mission is to make sure that we have an effective learning environment, inclusive, ensuring that all students are able to achieve their academic and personal fulfillment and become responsible citizens in our global society. Our vision, as you can see here, I won't certainly read it to everyone. Everyone can read it. But this is the work that we do to make sure that our students are prepared to leave us as effective and contributing citizens. Our core values, as you can see them on the screen, guide our decision-making in the school district, in our schools and in our school district. And align with the way we make decisions as we make recommendations to the school committee regarding our budget. And we believe that if we follow our strategic plan, that we will prepare students for a lifetime of individual growth and community contribution. And these, as I stated, are our current strategic objectives. And now I'm going to move into just a brief discussion and overview of our budget building process. We start with our plan for success, our strategic plan. We then look at the individual objectives under that strategic plan. What are the things that we're going to work on in order to make that plan reality? And we build a budget to allow us to meet those strategic objectives and initiatives and ultimately achieve our strategic goals. Our budget, the objective of our budget always is to make the best use of our resources. And we have not only our financial resources, but our human resources, our time, and our facilities. So we want to be, we are always mindful of utilizing our resources in the most effective and efficient manner. And do you want to speak to these, Cheryl, or you want me to?
No, I kind of stole these from someplace. So you can discuss
Okay.
them.
These are our top priorities. These are certainly not the only things that we will be working on in FY24, but these are key priorities. They are aligned with our current strategic plan, but they are also taken a little bit from the work that we're doing to develop our new strategic plan. And as I said, they really align with our current strategic plan as well. We want to make sure that we continue to be responsive to students and parents and stakeholders in community members in making sure that we are continuing to build deep and meaningful connections to the work that's happening in our school district. And so that's one of our key priorities. The learning environment that's accepting of all students and engaging to all learners, making sure that students have a sense of belonging, feel welcome, and feel confident in their ability to succeed in our school environments. And continuing to build our differentiated systems of learning and support to make sure that, again, not only the students, but the staff are supported and can grow and reach their maximum potential. And with that, I will turn it over to Cheryl.
As part of our public hearing, we also want to show to the public and the school committee some of the other funds that are supporting our operations. So I have a couple of slides here of what funds are supporting the FY24 operating budget. We have staffing and transportation. On the first slide, we have staffing in the school nutrition revolving account. All of the expenses for that program are come out of that revolving account. It's not funded by the general budget other than bad debts in the school lunch program. Our school choice account is funding 33.5 positions for next year in this round of our budget, or $2.4 million. Our school property use, because we do have at least one company renting space in our buildings, we charge off 2 custodians to that school property use. 119 is the ESSER 3 grant. That is a COVID-related grant that we have professionals, 12 professionals staffing positions charged to. Those are a lot of the positions that are allowed under that grant as we were coming back out of the pandemic for addressing learning loss or social emotional learning, so things of that sort. So those are the positions that we have been planning for since we got the first ESSER grant, how we were going to fund and what the needs were of the students at the time, and how we're going to fund those positions going forward when that grant funding is no longer available to us. Grant 240 is the IDEA special education grant. We have 8 paraprofessionals being paid from that grant. Early childhood supports 1 grant position. And 305 is Title I grant that funds the 3 coaches, the literacy coaches. In school choice revolving, we also pay for transportation for school choice kids. It's not only school choice students that are on those buses anymore. A number of years ago, we cut the number of buses we have. So right now, when we rewrote the regional agreement in 2014, we took transportation away from being an assessment directly to the towns that were funding the buses that are running through, say, Barry. And we all agreed at the table, and it was agreed at the town meetings by the voters, and it was agreed by the commissioner when he read our agreement and approved it, that we put it in as an operating expense, because right now we have buses crossing over town lines, as well as school choice buses picking up students from the 5-member towns on their way to schools. So it's not only school choice students on those buses. Our next screen is talks about revolving accounts. And these are the balances as of December. I usually send a quarterly report to the school committee. This is the last quarterly report that you have that shows what the beginning cash balance was in all of these funds, revenues, expenditures, and the cash balances and encumbrances, and then what the fund balance was as of December. There are not a lot of positions that are funded from these other than the school choice account. Most of it is expenses. We've started a new process in our reporting that monthly I've been reporting to the school committee about our grant awards. And so these are the balances in all of our grant awards as of January. You've been getting an update from me on those monthly in our reports. I usually start talking about enrollment right up front because this is who we are building the budget for. We're going to talk about school year 2022-2023 enrollment. And there are actually 3 different types of enrollment that we talk about as we're building our budget. There's resident enrollment, and those are the students who are enrolled in the district who live in our 5-member towns, and including those that may temporarily be living outside of our 5-member towns, but we are fiscally responsible for. School enrollment are the actual kids sitting in our seats. So that includes resident students, school choice students, and any tuition-in students, which we do not have this current school year. And then our district enrollment, which is all of the students that are served by the district. So those that are sitting in our seats, our students that are in special education out of district placements, and any students that receive services only. For example, a 3-year-old that's getting speech services.
Should I ask a question along the way?
Sure.
Now, on your grant awards, do you foresee any of these going away?
No, we don't foresee them going away. The carryover grants are a little different these days than they were in the past, where they allow you to take funds that aren't spent in one year and carry it over to the next year, but they have to be reported separately. So you'll see that in here, you'll see 140 has a carryover component, 240, 252. Those will go away, but then the current year's grants will become a rollover into the next year. We don't see any of these going away for next year because ESSER 3 will get us through next year.
Okay.
After that, that one will be going away.
Okay.
We're going to talk about resident enrollment next, and that's very important when it comes to calculating assessments for member towns. So you can see I show 3 years of data here by town of residence, and you can see that we've lost 25 students from last school year to this school year, October 1 enrollment date. In over 20 years, we've lost over 1,000 students. I just keep this data, and I have data going back to FY02 of our student and our resident enrollment data. I like to show it in a graph format sometimes because it's more impactful that way. I do make a note here that in the 2021-22 school year, you'll see a little bump in the residency there because there was 54 of the 116 student increase in that year was due to pre-K. We expanded our pre-K program. This is a graph that I've been showing forever. The blue line is actual enrollment of the district. You can see there in FY05, that was the highest number of students in the residents in the district at over 3,000. And you can see that we've had declining enrollment ever since. We're starting to go up in FY22, but that's mainly due to the expansion of the pre-K program. The red line is projected enrollment from a study that NESDEC did for us in July of 2020. So we're a little bit higher than they were projecting for these years, although we did lose enrollment this particular year. School enrollment on October 1. I have a comparison here for 3 years. We had 2,223 students in our seats last year. We have 2,172. So that's down 51 students from last year. That's a combination of resident students as well as school choice students. And over time, you can see over 2 years ago, we had 77 more students, but over the past 20 years, again, down 1,000 students in our schools. Here's our school enrollment trend. Really goes just about the same as our resident enrollment trend. So I have a graph that shows both of those lines. You can see there's a little anomaly there. They go right down like a ski slope together until you hit 2018, 19, and 19, 20. And that's the time of period when DESE told us you can no longer count students that are in your pre-K program as resident students if you collect tuition. Those of you that have been on the board for a while, you remember that we recommended that we no longer charge tuition so that we could count those students as pre-K residents and get Chapter 70 money for them. So that's why the blue graph goes up while the black graph goes down in that period of time. That's when we could no longer count those students as residents. It was to our advantage to no longer collect tuition and get the Chapter 70 money for those students. I keep school enrollment by grade. So you can see there, I have a little note on the bottom that the current 11th grade class of 2024 is the smallest class at 122 students. And the 8th grade class of 2027 is the largest at 194 students. Excuse me. I do keep track of school choice enrollment by the hometown that they're coming from. So this chart includes one school choice student who choices in, but then goes out of district. The Department of Elementary and Secondary Education do not record that student as a school choice student. It counts as an out of district special education student. So sometimes you'll see the numbers don't make sense, and I kind of make notes there to tell you why. So those are the sending towns for this school year. I've kept that school choice enrollment history going back to fiscal 2000. You can see we had a peak in fiscal 2008 of 429 school choice students attending. And this graph will change because the number that's there for FY23 is the enrollment as of this past October 1st. But school choice enrollment is updated monthly. So the revenue that we get for school choice students is based on the actual number of days in attendance. So next year, you'll see that this number changed. So if you went back and looked at a graph from last year, it would have a different number for FY22 than 285.87, because that's the final number as of June. Sometimes we get questions of why are we losing school choice kids? A more accurate statement is there are less school-age children all around, so that's why we have less school choice kids coming in. But as compared to our total school enrollment, we range around 12 or 13%. This year happens to be a little lower than 12% of our student body are school choice in students. I also talk about our residents who choose to go somewhere else than Quabbin, as well as choose to go to charter schools. Last year, I was very happy to tell you that we kind of stopped the trend. We reversed the trend on school choice and charter school out, but that's no longer the case. Last year, we had almost 30 students we were down 30 students from the prior year of choicing out or going to charter schools. This year, we have 10 additional students who have chosen to go somewhere else for their education. And you'll notice later in the budget that school choice out tuition and charter school tuition rates got kicked up in this version of the budget. This is just for information. If you're wondering how many of the students from your particular town are going somewhere else, I've got the numbers here for the last 3 years and where they're going. Charter school enrollment. You can see in FY20, we had almost 23 FTEs going to charter schools. That dropped to 13 the next year. And in FY22, that dropped further to 11.5. But this year, we're up to 15 students that are enrolled in charter schools. When we start to develop the budget that's nearly $40 million, we have to make some assumptions because all of the information that we need to develop that budget is not known at the time. And that's why we make different versions as we go along the process, because certain variables become known. This particular year, we have all 6 collective bargaining agreements open. So for all of the positions that are covered by a collective bargaining agreement, we have increased the steps. If staff is moving through steps, that's been budgeted in those line items. Open positions or requested positions that are still in this version 2 of the budget are budgeted, if they're a K-8 teaching position, they're budgeted at $62,727 or an M step 4. If they're at the high school, it's a little higher number, $66,194. By no means is that where we hope to land, because sometimes it's very expensive to get new teachers in certain areas. But as we go through the whole hiring process, which we seem to do every day over the last 3 or 4 years, we hope that the money that we have budgeted will cover all of the positions we need. Positions that are covered by an individual contract have been budgeted at the FY22 rate, because those COLAs have not been decided either at this time. If there are open or requested positions under individual contracts, they were budgeted at the current rate or anticipated rate. We have a number of positions, maybe about 30 to 35 positions that are at-will employees. And that is also budgeted at the same FY23 rate in the line item budget. The COLA and collective bargaining negotiation money, funding for the cost of living increases and whatever else comes out of collective bargaining negotiations, has been budgeted in a lump sum and not in the individual salary lines. When it's all said and done, then we move it all around. Staffing requests. We have a list of positions that were open at the time that we developed this budget. There will be 20.2 FTEs open due to retirement or resignation. You can see what they are there. And the amount of money that has been budgeted for those positions. At this point, we are saying that all of those positions are necessary to open school next year. That may change later, but I'll talk about that a little more later. This next grid shows the positions that were requested for next year in our preliminary budget. But at this point in time, some of those positions have been cut and some of those positions have been posted off to other funding sources. For example, if it says cut, that means we are no longer at this point believing that we are going to hire that position. You'll see that line 2 and 3, intervention specialists, say ESSER 3. We needed to take stance of where we were with our ESSER 3 money at the end of this year, which will be carried over to next year. And we are going to post those 2 positions to that ESSER 3 grant. If we do not use the ESSER 3 money by the end of next year, they take it away. Actually, it's September. It ends the federal fiscal year, which is September 30th. But we always planned from the beginning of getting ESSER money, ESSER 1, 2, and 3, that we would not go to the end of the federal fiscal year because that's in September, that we would end in June. So there are a couple of positions that have been cut here and some others that are being transferred over to ESSER 3 and some others that we are hoping at this point to still keep in the budget. As I went through these screens, and when I talk about individual accounts on the appropriation control report and the changes that have happened, I've added a line of what that line was in the preliminary budget, the changes that were made between now and this public hearing budget down the bottom. So just to say, the preliminary budget for these requested positions was $503,169. We cut $224,673. So now they total $278. You'll see that at the bottom of the next couple of screens. Capital requests. The athletic field press box and bleacher system was not placed in the budget to begin with. We are hoping that this project will be funded by some borrowing. We are having a fundraising initiative. As of today, the current fundraising is $16,413. We estimate this project to be $350,000, but we have some steps to be taken that haven't been started yet of going out and getting quotes from state bidders and putting out the bid for this project. The other building improvement and capital requests that were included in the preliminary budget have all been cut at this point. We are leaving in our basically repair program of overlaying the seams at the middle high school roof. There's $10,000 there and it is over the threshold for a capital project. However, we don't know whether or not that will be used. It all depends on the condition of the roof and if we need to do anything with it. So that $10,000 has been moved to a building repair line rather than a capital request. The chiller, I will talk about this more in my report, but at this point, we are taking a look at 3 alternatives we have to either repairing the chiller, replacing the chiller, or renting one in the meantime. So I will talk about that more in my report later. That has been removed from capital requests because that is another project that we expect to go to the towns for a separate warrant article to do a borrowing for that and the athletic bleacher and press box system. So now we'll get into the budget itself. I'm sure all of you know, but anyone online, we have 3 sets of reports for our budget that are tied together. The first is the line item budget, and that is highlighted in gray. These represent all of the accounts that are budgeted for. They then subtotal by function, which is a DESE code. We are required by DESE to use these particular codes in our accounting program. And this report is really a stepping stone between the line item budget with all of the detail to the appropriation control report, which are the 16 different categories that the school committee approves a budget and approves transfers between the line items. So you should be able to take a subtotal on the line item report, go to the function total report, go to the appropriation control report. As Mr. Wiggler opened tonight, this is the appropriation category report. It will show you where the preliminary budget was, the second column, as compared to the current year's budget, which was the $40 million or 10.4% increase. The third column is where we currently are at the public hearing budget. That totals $39,209,041, or a 7.9% increase over the current year. This year, I've added columns to show you the difference between each version of the budget, as well as how it compares to the current years. So right now, I'm going to go through each of the line items of the appropriation control report and what the changes have been made from the preliminary budget to where we are now. These are the exact cuts that were made, so I won't go through these. You can refer back to them later, but I talk about them at the level of the appropriation control line. In district administration, there was a small change made, but this line item is 1.7% over last year, mostly due to software licensing costs and renewal fees, and an increase in legal services. Administrative technology is up 9.2% because we were at the time where we need a 3-year renewal on our antivirus software, and Aspen and Microsoft licensing fees. Instructional support has been changed since the preliminary budget. It was 15.2 million. We made changes of 338,000. It is now at 14.8 million, or a $1.2 million increase over last year, for the current year, or 8.7%. But this is where that contingency account is for all of the negotiations and COLA discussions in this group. Our big yellow transportation is the same as it was in the preliminary budget because we have a contract in place that's going to increase by 2.5%. Certain components of that contract will not increase by that amount. So that's why the overall total is 2.3. Athletic and student activities have not changed from the preliminary budget. The increase of 5.8% is due to athletic coach steps and the expansion of our unified team season. Our unified team is our teams for special education students. Last year, we had only 1 season. I believe we're expanding to 3 seasons. School security is going down, even though we are increasing. Most of these positions are the lunch and security monitors. And minimum wage went up from $14.25 to $15. They do only earn minimum wage. And we also had a change in personnel. So that was why there's a decrease in that line. In our buildings and grounds department, we're looking at a change from the preliminary budget of $574,000. That's due to the removal of all of the capital items. The major increase in this line item is our heating oil with a 21.3% increase. Technology infrastructure. The director had hired a department intern and doesn't really want to let go of that additional set of hands right now. In benefits, there has been a change because we got in our teachers' health insurance was reduced to the actual amount. We actually got a letter from the Group Insurance Commission where our retired teachers and administrators are covered for health insurance. It said, yeah, they made a mistake in their actuarial calculations, and that's really why we had a decrease there. But we anticipate an increase in health insurance. We have the actual cost for our Worcester regional assessment, and we've anticipated increases in our workers' compensation and unemployment costs. Fixed charges are really our business insurances as well as school committee insurances. That was an 11.04% increase on the business insurance side. That's mainly due to our general liability increases. School choice and charter, I made mention of this earlier. When we start the budget, I just use the number that was there for the current year because we don't know what it really will be until we at least get an indication from the DESE of how many students they expect are in other places this year. There's no reason to increase it and then have to increase it again. So based on the cherry sheet that came out with Governor Healy's budget, our increase in choice and charter tuition, because of the number of kids we have going out, increases this line item. The SE in front of these categories means special education. Legal services and settlements is increasing by 60%. But we've got notice from our lawyers that their rate is going to increase by 60%. Administrative technology is staying the same from the preliminary budget. This again is due to Aspen and Microsoft licensing fees. At some point, our entire budget is going to go to software and licensing fees. In instructional support, just want to caution you that, again, there are step increases here for staff in the special education area, but none of the COLAs are there. They're all budgeted again up in regular education instructional support. Transportation and special education, we expected an increase there. We base these costs on the current year need. We did get our first iteration of our next year's contract, which Superintendent and I almost fell off of our chair. There has been no change to this line item, but we have some negotiating to do with our provider. In special education tuition, this increase is mostly due to the 14% increase in tuition rates that was given to special education placements. I have made a small adjustment down from the preliminary budget, and that is due to our assessment for special education for students that are in hospital placements and settings. That number on the cherry sheet was down. I made the adjustment here. Our long-term debt service is going down because we are on a declining debt schedule. Our next steps. You've seen this graphic before, but it's now time to review data to determine how programs are impacting instruction and achievement in case reductions or cuts are necessary, which we all believe will probably be true. We'll take a look at our resources and project our balances in ESSER 3. As you'll see later on in the reports that we will give, I think it said we still have 12 positions that are unfilled at this time. So we have some budget savings in those line items because we can't find people to fill our positions. So we're going to be keeping close tabs on all of this, whether they're paid for out of the budget, the grants, the revolving accounts. We'll keep an eye on where our E&D projected ending balance will be. And our revenue, adjust our revenue sources accordingly. We'll also adjust our revenue sources as we move through the state process with the House budget and the Senate budget. Based on our goals, we need to determine if all of the programs that we have put in place will continue, as well as we will be monitoring projected enrollments. We talk about this all the time to determine class size and determine the staffing patterns that are needed. And of course, we're going to contact our legislators, as we talked about on Tuesday night, regarding regional school transportation, which we learned was only given to us at 75% instead of 90%. Circuit breaker, there's supposed to be some movement there to help us absorb that 14% increase in tuition, and keep an eye on rural school aid and how that will impact us next year. Looking at revenue projections, I can't. I need to take a break. Excuse me, I can't breathe a thing.
Yes.
Thanks for keeping so quiet so you can hear what's going on out there. Like nobody's talking. So because we got the governor's budget on February 27th, which happened to be a snow day, and we thought that we were going to get it in March, we had some more work to do. Our revenue begins with our foundation budget. I have for you here our actual foundation budget from the Department of Education. I wanted to point out to you, for those of you that get to see this on your own screen, our foundation enrollment are in the boxes in red and blue at the very top. Everything starts with how many kids you have. Foundation enrollment is different than the three types of enrollment I outlined earlier. Foundation enrollment is the number of students that our 5 communities are fiscally responsible for. So that could be that you have a student, say it's a special education student in an out-of-district placement that shares homes between mom in Barry and dad in Paxton. And 1 year, we're responsible for paying his tuition, for her tuition, and the next year, Paxton, Wachusett is responsible for paying tuition. So that's what's going on in foundation enrollment. It's not the number of residents that live in our town that are going to our schools, it's who we are fiscally responsible for. So that number, when I said we reduced in enrollment by 25 students, remember? You'll see foundation enrollment only reduced by 15 students, because there's 10 of them that we're still responsible for. The ones in blue are students that are identified as English learners or low-income students, and I'll tell you why they're out there and denoted differently. Also want to just point out to you what's in the red circles. The small red circle is our foundation budget of $27 million, which is the absolute minimum that we can pay for education. And I also want to point out to you what low-income group Quabbin is in for FY24. It is group 7, and that's where we are for this year as well. And I'll tell you why in a second. So how the foundation budget is calculated, there are 11 different categories of expenses. You'll see that in blue going across the top. Those categories are very similar to what our appropriation categories are and the way in which we build our budget. Not exactly, but very close. On the left-hand side, there are 9 different categories of students. So students are going to fit in there somewhere. So that foundation enrollment that I talked about are going to fit in there somewhere. And then you multiply the enrollment by category of student times the rate for that category of expense and add the whole grid together, and you come to $27 million. Except for those students that I outlined in blue, the English learners and the low-income students, the Student Opportunity Act said that we need to fund those students at a different level. You'll see how many different categories of English learners there are. There are 3, and it depends on what grade levels they're in. But there are, I forget exactly, but I think there's 11 or so categories of low-income students. Quabbin doesn't have a student in each one of those categories. All of our students are lumped into category group 7. So if you take groups, low-income group 7, which is 36 to 41.99% of your population is low income, and go across that line, we get that added increment for each one of those low-income students. Now, we lost low-income students. So we lost money to go into our foundation budget, which means we lost aid. The main factors to foundation budget increases. Because did I do that up there? Okay, back to this one here. I'm sorry. Can you go back 3 slides? One more. Right there. In the blue box, our foundation budget for the current year is 25.6 million. Our foundation budget is increasing to 27 million, or a 1.4 million or 5.62% increase. That's huge. That's because of the Student Opportunity Act and all of those new rates and those higher rates for those increments for English learners and low-income students. That's not, if we were not a declining district student, a district in hold harmless situation, we'd be getting $1 million in money, but we're not getting $1 million in money. So 3 more slides, right there. So the main factors to why there's that $1.4 million increase in the foundation budget for Quabbin is because there's an inflation factor that DESE applies to all of those cost multipliers. It was capped at 4.5% again. Mr. Chairman had quite a conversation with the DESE reps the other night of saying, why are you capping it at 4.5 when inflation's at 9%? Imagine where we would be if we actually were getting what true inflation was. And again, there are higher values for other categories than just English learners and low-income students, but also higher values written into the Student Opportunity Act for benefits and fixed charges, guidance and psychological services, special education out-of-district tuitions, and again, low-income and English learners. And then the incremental increases that I talked about.
What did the DESE guy have to say to Mark when buried him on that?
I believe Mr. O'Donnell told him it was written into the law.
Has nothing to do with reality or what the needs are or anything like that. Some jackass wrote it in the law and kept the lawyer employed in the meantime, so therefore that's what it is.
It is what it is. I'm gonna just say it is what it is. I asked that question in regards to that, especially we understand the different categories and the different percentages that would apply to try to offset that. But it didn't change the perspective that it's based on a 4.5% number that hasn't changed in years. So that's why it was brought up.
I think it was decades, right?
Decades, decades. And that's why, again, I brought that up as I have done over the past 4 years.
I don't think it's ever been raised since education reform in 1993.
93.
You said that. So next screen.
At least we put it on record.
So our decrease in low income students alone, last year we had 890. And if you remember what I said last year, it was a double-edged sword. We have more low income kids. We're getting a little more foundation aid money, but it's going to cost us more to educate those kids. This year we lost 10 kids. So we lost $352,000 out of the foundation budget because we lost those students. That's why enrollments are very expensive. When the numbers came out on February 27th, I texted Sheila and I said, we need to find a builder to build low cost housing in our 5 towns. That's the only way we're going to get over this. This is a graph that comes right out of DESC's presentation. And I just show where Quabbin is when we're talking about what low income enrollment is and what portion of the foundation budget we're getting for our low income students. So we're getting $13,860 for each low income student. Last year, we got $13,022. You'll note that this chart, and this is a DESE chart, excludes vocational and agricultural districts. I wonder why that is. So I'm going to get on my soapbox now. Where is the majority of FY24 funding going? These are the top 13 districts receiving Chapter 78 over $10 million. It totals to $293 million. 50% of the entire Chapter 70 increase is going to these 13 communities. Only one fell off of this list from last year when I did this, and that was the city of Haverhill, city of Haverhill. It's no longer on this top list. But 13 districts are getting 50% of the new Chapter 70 money.
It's shocking that Boston's not.
Boston is the largest city in hold harmless debt, Dr. Allen.
So in hold harmless, you can't get SOA money, is that right?
We get SOA money. You see, my foundation budget increased by $1.4 million, right? So when your foundation budget increases, you should be getting more aid, not the whole 1.4 million, because our towns are paying required local contribution. But if you don't get the money, it reduces our debt, and I'm getting there soon. Yes. So I'm on my soapbox because I would really like to see, this is the second year of these big numbers going to these cities on top of ESSER money. Somebody show me the return on investment.
On the other hand, I will say I would rather live here, and I would rather have the education that we have here for our students here than the living conditions or the education in any of those places.
I'd like to get the chapter 78 that they're getting.
Different issue. I still would take what we have.
So looking at required local contribution, that is the second calculator of the chapter 70 formula. Required local contribution is determined by, well, one, the law, two, by the reports from our individual towns that get sent to the Department of Revenue and then to the Department of Education. But this is what Dr. Marshall, in the center of the screen is what Dr. Marshall was talking about last night. The formula states that 59% of the cost of education needs to come from our communities, while 41% comes from state aid. And she was advocating last night to have that, that ratio change, because that could be big money to cities and towns.
Which is the way it used to be.
Yeah, I think we were up close to 70% once upon a time.
In the sixties for a few years.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember back before then, I think we were close to 70%.
Actually, I don't know why I have this as it is last year too. I don't know what the next screen really means, so we can go back to the next screen.
You wanna go to the next
So
screen?
I want to, yep, I want to go past, it.
Okay. There you go.
go past that one. That's it.
There is currently a bill that's being considered.
Yes,
Yes, there is. Yes. there is.
Senator Lewis to reduce that what, by 5%, from
yes.
59 to 54%.
Yes, and that would be a tremendous difference, right? Especially districts that are in Cold
Yeah,
Harbor.
but can that have an impact on this?
Potentially, but I believe the bill is written for like a 4 or 5 year phase in, so it might only see the ratio change by 1% over a series of years, but even 1%, I mean,
We'll take it.
everything can help, absolutely.
Next screen. Dr.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So last year, Maureen Marshall asked me if I had the information regarding our towns and whether they were contributing required local contribution at or above target. And I responded to her that I had this available for tonight and that all of our towns are below target. So just for information, I have got each one of our towns here. This is their calculation of their required local contribution from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. Line 11 indicates what the target level for the town of Barry should be. And it says that Barry should be contributing 41.44% to their required local contribution. But the calculation that happens on line 16 is they're only contributing at 37.06%. So they're below their target. They're not contributing enough to Quabbin as compared to what the level of income and property values are in the town of Barry. So that's why I've highlighted the bottom box that says if the preliminary contribution is below target share, they have to, BSE calculates what the shortage is and kind of like finds them by making them pay a little bit more. So even though their target is 41.44%, they're really only contributing to Quabbin and the other districts they belong to at a rate of 37.41. That's the town of Barry. I've done it for each of the 5 towns. Hardwick's target share is 46.28. The calculation shows them that they would be contributing at 39.48. So they're getting an incremental amount to pay that brings them up to 39.87, but still short of their 46% target share. This is what all leads to the increases in their required local contributions that I'm going to round this all out with. Hubbardston's target share is 58%. The calculation would have them contributing at 52, but they've got that incremental amount toward target, so they're going to be contributing at 50, basically 53% rather than 58%. New Braintree's target share is 61%. The formula has them contributing at 60%. So they do not have to, because their shortfall is under 1 or 2%, they don't have to pay any more, but they will be contributing at that 60.29%. OCAM's target share is 56%. calculation has them at 51. They're getting an incremental amount toward target, and they will be contributing at 51.67. Each community's calculated required local contribution that I understand it was quickly, ran through, is then a portion among all of the districts where they belong. So Barry will take that required local contribution and split it between Quabbin and Monty Tech. And it's all based, it's not only based on enrollment, because we went through how our foundation budget is calculated. Well, that's done for Monty Tech as well. And so then Barry pays their portion of that foundation budget to Monty Tech based on the number of students they have there. So just again, for information services here. In Hardwick, you'll see Quabbin and Pathfinder, but you'll also see that Hardwick has some money that they're going to get. And that is because I'm going to guess they have kids at Smith Folk. Hubbardston, their required local contribution is split between Quabbin and Monty Tech. New Braintree, Quabbin and Pathfinder, and again, they have kids at vocational schools. OCAM between Quabbin and Pathfinder.
That's
So-
for this year, right?
That's for next year.
Because I didn't think we had any going to Smith next year. Oh, the one. right?
If you'll be a senior.
So for that portion that is just for Quabbin, it's on this screen now. So by our member community, you can see what percentage they're paying in required local contribution as compared to what they're paying this year. Now, none of them are paying at their target.
Right.
If DESE mandated that they all pay a target, these numbers would be much greater than an average of 5.4%. But this number is the base of the assessment calculation for our member communities. So the base of Barry's assessment is going to increase by 6.4%. Hardwick by 4, Hubbardston by 5.7, New Braintree by 2.4, and Oakham by 5.6. New Braintree's is lower because they're closer to target than anyone else. So this increase in required local contribution is part of the pie that they're paying towards Quabbin's funding of the budget. And if you have the largest increase in required local contribution, the base, and you have more kids that you're paying for a bigger part of the pie there, you're going to have the highest assessments. So if you remember back to our resident enrollment slides, Hubbardston and Oakham had an increase in the number of residents coming to school. The other 3 towns had a reduction. Hubbardston has the second highest increase in required local contribution, and Hubbardston is right below that. They both had an increase in residents as well. They're going to see the highest percentage of assessment increase. Barry has the highest increase in their required local contribution, but had the greatest reduction in the number of students they have to pay for. Therefore, they're not the top highest assessment increase. Foundation aid is really Chapter 70 aid and any other aid that you need to have to bring you to at least be paying for your foundation budget. The very simple formula is, I said you start with the foundation budget, you subtract what your towns are paying required local contribution, that equals Chapter 78. Until the error of hold harmless and declining enrollment. So the foundation budget is based on your enrollment, minus the required local contribution, which is based on town data, the wealth in the town, equals Chapter 70. However, there is a stipulation in the law that says Chapter 70 must be at least the amount of the prior year. It is not reduced due to declining enrollment. And that's how we got into hold harmless debt. One more screen share. So hold harmless debt is if your calculation of Chapter 78, what I just said, foundation budget minus required local contribution, that's the number. If that is lower than last year's chapter 78, that's your hold harmless debt. The state has not taken money away from you. It may have given you a little more, $30 per kid, but they're not going to take it away from you. But someday you'll owe it back. Now we owe it back. Most districts that have been or are experiencing consistent declining enrollment are in hold harmless debt. Here's that graph again. We certainly have had our share of declining enrollment. The next slide is actually a DESC calculation of chapter 70. I just want to point out some really important numbers. The green arrow you'll see is foundation budget for FY '24. There's our $27 million number. So I put it over in the blue box so you can see it a little larger. The purple number and the purple arrow is what the total of our required local contributions added up to, 12.2 million. And you subtract it, foundation aid should be 14.8 million. Our chapter 78 is just slightly higher than last year. Last year it was 16,821,478. They're going to give us $30 per kid, so it's at 16,880,000. You subtract that, it's a $2 million difference. The state is giving us $2 million more than they really should be. That's our hold harmless debt. Last year, our hold harmless debt, or this year, the current year, was 2.8 million. That difference of 960,000 is that gain of the Student Opportunity Act. Remember, it was really, the foundation budget went up by 1.4. The next slide will show you where that comes into play. Here's our foundation budget from last year, this current year, I'm sorry, 25.6 million, now it's 27 million. I showed you before, the foundation budget increase was 1.4 million. We're getting $30 per kid, subtract that. The towns, they all added up to paying $623,000 more, subtract that. We're getting a revenue increase of $682,000. So the effect on SOA is the $58,000 plus the $682,000. Last year's hold harmless debt was 2.8. Now we're at a little over 2 million. Dr. Muir and I thought we were going to gain more ground this year, but what happened? We lost resident enrollment. Not only did we lose resident enrollment,
Types of.
we lost the types
Types
of
of.
resident enrollment
Types
that
of.
gives us the biggest dollars. We lost low-income kids and English learners. So we were hoping to get a little more than just that $756,000 difference, but we didn't get there. The top 20 districts that are in hold harmless debt and just receiving $30 per kid, there's Boston, Dr. Allen. Highest hold harmless debt for FY '24, $13.7 million. There's 20 districts listed here. We are number 31. We used to be up at the top of that chart. So the first year, not the first year of Student Opportunity Act, because they didn't fund it. We're supposed to fund it over 7 years. They didn't even fund it the first year. But the second year of Student Opportunity Act, we got that big hit that dropped us from up at the top of the chart down to number 31 for next year. I took Julie Kelly's, who is the analyst for the Mars Group, took her spreadsheet and said, okay, looks like 26 districts are new to hold harmless debt. They're there for the first time, or at least they weren't there last year. 46 districts are now out of hold harmless debt. And I have a colleague that I mentored to get her license, and she said that first year we're out of hold harmless debt, we have nothing to worry about. We just have to get there. 55 districts have increased their debt, but 150 have reduced their debt. So we have reduced our hold harmless debt. Looking at our financial resources as a whole and funding our budget, we have these 3 pillars. From state aid, we get chapter 78, regional transportation, charter school reimbursement, which is directly proportionate to your charter school tuitions, and McKinney-Vento reimbursement. On the district revenue side, we have Medicaid reimbursement that we always use as a revenue source. We get reimbursed from the US Navy for our ROTC program.
Yay, ROTC.
And we also use our E&D. And then we have from our member towns, the operating assessment and the long-term debt assessment. I know this next slide is very small, but it does show our history back to FY02 as to what the increase or decrease in chapter 78 has been for us over years. You look at FY07, we actually got 5.4% increase in chapter 78. And then you can see the minus of 2%, minus of 5.8, and it's never been over a half a percentage again. The next set of columns shows us what our total state aid is and increased or decreased over time. The next two columns show what our total budget, including debt, has increased or decreased over time, and what percent of state aid was actually funding our budget. And then I've added a column on there for the use of E&D. When we use E&D as a funding source, I just kept track of it there. So looking at our revenue sources piece by piece in those pillars, our state aid revenue based on the governor's budget is up just a little over a half a percentage point. District revenues and reserves, we did recommend to the budget subcommittee the other night, and you all approved tonight, using $500,000 of E&D. We did not use any E&D for this current year. Okay, I need to know what those two variables are in order to go forward and calculate assessments. A little bit about the background of assessments in a regional school district. When ed reform was passed in '93, there was two methods by which you could calculate assessments. This is what's called the statutory method or regional agreement method. The statutory method is here's your state revenues. You're putting in different district reserves in, and then your town share the rest based on required local contribution and the number of kids in the district. That's the statutory method. Regional agreement method, you guys all sit down at a table, you come up with a method, you all agree to it. Then the commissioner has to agree to it. Quabbin uses the statutory method. If you choose to use a regional agreement method, it has to be voted on by every town at an annual town meeting. All towns must agree every year to use the regional agreement method. And the Commissioner of Education has to be notified of the adoption of that type of method. He has to agree to every regional agreement, so he should know what they are. So as I said, we use the statutory method. To put it in words, the really easy math of calculating assessment. Take our total budget, subtract out a capital budget because that's assessed separately. Subtract out the debt assessment because that's assessed separately. And that's your operating budget. For Quabbin anyway, it's an operating budget. Other districts also cut out transportation. Then you take the operating budget and you subtract the state aid and the district revenue. And that's the amount of the budget that needs to be apportioned to our member communities. Of that number, you subtract the required local contribution by town. And then you're left with an amount of money that gets apportioned by enrollment. When you add that apportionment to the regional, the required local contribution, that's the town's total assessment. What part did we not talk about yet is the percentage of resident enrollment. The apportionment is the number of residents in each town on October 1, which we're back in those charts we started with, and what proportion belong to each one of the towns. So I just repeat these here, that you can see the increase in resident enrollment for the towns of Hubbardston and Ocamp, and the decreases in enrollment for Barry, Hardwick, and New Braintree. So Barry, Hardwick, and New Braintree will contribute a bit less to Quabbin's budget, while Hubbardston and Ocamp will be funding a greater portion of the budget. Always love to throw in a graph. Thank you, Dr. L. A few years ago, I developed this spreadsheet that takes the words to how do you calculate assessments and puts it in a spreadsheet that you can follow. A minus B minus C minus D equals this. So it's very clear on how our district calculates member town assessments. I have to admit here now that Tuesday night, all of my charts were wrong. I guess it goes when you haven't slept for 3 nights straight. And so I had in my revenue report, I had the wrong budget number in the big block that says enter budget here. It actually says that to me, enter budget here. And it was an old number. So everything that was in the last presentation was wrong. The member town assessments based on the number that was voted by the committee tonight range from, sorry, I have to make mine bigger here. Range from 7.97% in New Braintree to 14.2% in Ocam. Those are slightly lower than the numbers that were reported out on Tuesday. Because not all of the reductions that were made during our administrative meetings were in the number that I had in that presentation. Now, long-term debt assessment are calculated separately from the operating assessment. And currently, we only have one outstanding project that has debt, and that's the middle high school green repair project that when we replace the atrium and the panels on the facade of the building. That was bonded in March of 2013 for $1.5 million roughly, and it will be paid off June 30th of 2027. The bond is apportioned to member towns based on the enrollment only at the middle high school. So it is done separately from the operating assessment. I add that together on, and here's the debt assessment schedule. I actually had a town administrator today email me and ask me for this document, which will be going out to everybody tomorrow. But here is the actual debt assessment that goes to our member towns so that they know what they owe on that project. And that becomes these calculations become part of our projected revenue sheet, which is on the next slide. And I think that projected revenue sheet was available to you all in your drive tonight. It's a separate document that will follow along with all of these screens. So where are we in the Commonwealth's budget process? The governor's budget came out in February. The next step is for the House Ways and Means budget to come out and then go to the House for a vote in April. The little gold sign over there means that anywhere along those steps, there could be a change in any component of the formula. There could be a change in foundation enrollment. There could be a change in foundation budget that leads to Chapter 78 changes. There may be an increase or decrease in minimum aid, not necessarily ever happened that it was decreased, but we have seen it increase from $30 per student to $60 per student. And if there are any changes in enrollment or require local contributions, that means there's changes to assessments. I remember it may be before actually Sheila's time as superintendent, that the regional school districts through Mass Association of Regional Schools went to the legislators and said, stop. You can't be changing required local contribution throughout the state's process because we have to change assessments and that switches where you are. So if the House budget comes out in April and a regional school district has their budget passed, and ever what proportion of the towns that have to pass it, they don't have to go back and recalculate assessments. But for those of us that have June town meetings and we're only partway through the process, we have to change those required local contributions, and those assessments go like this. And they say, okay, we understand, and they held it for 1 year. But since that, they have not done that. So when we have to go into the summer to get our budgets passed, if say town A passes their budget at the annual town meeting, but we don't have 4 out of 5 in the end of the process, and they change required local contributions, everyone's assessment changes. Let's go back to town A that approved it. If their assessment went up, they have to call another town meeting. If it went down, they do not have to, they just get the reduction. But that's what happens in a region if they change those numbers along the way. which required local contribution is just a part of the formula. So if any other part of the formula changes, that's going to change. But it makes it very difficult for us to get through a budget season. That's all I have for tonight. If there's anyone that has questions or comments that they don't want to bring up now, they can email it to budget@qrsd.org and we will get back to you.
Sure that also running on a parallel course, our administrators are taking a hard look at what they need for the next year. And we also have collective bargaining that's going on, which could result in some modifications. So it's, you know, we're doing a lot of work also on the local level to take a look at the budget and where any efficiencies can be made. I mean, that's what we're doing, right? I mean,
We certainly are. And we are also watching enrollments very carefully. The enrollments shift almost daily in this district. You know, we have new students enrolling and students leaving. And we don't yet know what our kindergarten enrollments will 100. We do our best to make predictions based on census data. The principals work very hard to connect with town officials and reach out to families that may have incoming kindergartners, but that is always a number that is unknown at this stage in our budgeting process. And so as we go through the budget, we will certainly be the next several weeks and months. We watch the enrollments very carefully. Our middle high school course enrollment process has not begun. It usually begins in late in the spring. That will affect staffing. Generally, it doesn't affect staffing significantly. It may cause us to shift staff from department to department. It's unlikely that it would allow us to make any significant staffing changes in terms of, maybe perhaps not replacing someone who's retiring or something like that. But we certainly watch that carefully. And if there is an opportunity to save a position by attrition, we absolutely will do that. But those are all moving targets over the next several months.
Dr. Allen, you had a question?
Yes. There's all kinds of numbers in here. What I didn't pick up was, what's the increase in each of the towns from last year to this year, this year to the upcoming year?
It's in there, right?
It is.
Slide 123, Sheila. Two more up.
Make that a little bit
Okay.
bigger.
I don't know if you can make it bigger or not. It's the bottom set of boxes. I did mention Dr. Allen. Based on the current budget number and using revenues, go up one more. Probably, I don't know if you can make it bigger or not. And based on the revenues from the cherry sheet from the governor's budget, Barry's assessment would increase 13.47, Hardwick 10.08, Hubbardston 13.72, New Braintree 7.97, Ocam 14.26 for an average of 12.72.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can you say Hubbardston again?
Hubbardston 13.72,
New Braintree at 7
97. Ocam 14.26. Average 12.72.
Any other question, comments? Anybody else?
There are no comments in the chat,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
If there's anything, if there isn't anything else or any committee member, I'm sure we're going to be meeting several occasions to discuss any modifications, concerns. I know the towns had expressed some concerns. And, but I'd really like to thank Cheryl for, once again, an outrageous presentation. And
Outrageous.
and a concern, you said you've been doing this for like 29 years, which is very good, but it's also concerns me. Because hopefully you can do it for another 10 years, at least.
Yes, sir.
But the bottom, thank you very much. And, Cheryl's a go-to person. If we have any questions relative to any of these slides, Cheryl has the answer. With that, we can close the public hearing. Thank you, everybody, for attending.
Unless you think we need a break, a 2-minute break or anything like that, we can go right into the agenda. How do you feel?
You gonna do the trips?
Yes, go. I'm gonna do the minutes and the trips.
Yeah, I move the minutes.
Okay,
I'm all right.
second,
I can read now.
you have in front of you or at your computer, Thursday, February 9th, school committee minutes. It's been moved and seconded. Are there any potential omissions and/or corrections? Seeing and hearing none, roll call, please.
I missed who made the motion.
The motion came
Dr.
from Dr. Allen
And
and Dave Marsh seconded.
thank you.
Start with-
Dr. Allen,
Yes.
Mr. Deshaps,
Yes.
Mr. Willannon, Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Ms. Garvey,
Yes.
Ms. Cartier,
Yes.
Ms. Chamberlain,
Yes.
Ms. Cormier, abstain. Mr. McDonald,
Yes.
Mr. Wiggler,
Abstain.
Mrs. Thompson,
Yes.
Mr. Nutter,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
and Mr. Marsh. I seem to have missed you.
Yes.
Thank you.
And then again, just kind of out of order, new business. First item we have is the IB Global Politics overnight trip to New York City, April 2024. Superintendent.
I'm going to share my screen. There is information about this field trip in the school committee drive. I know that Ms. DeMarias is here this evening. I'm assuming that, and Mr. Minton and Mr. Wheeler. So I'm imagining that they are going to walk us through an overview of this trip, and I will scroll through information as I'm directed by our presenters. So feel free to unmute yourselves and provide your overview.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent. James, can you test your mic real quick?
Yep. Thank you for having us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks a lot. James and I are two of the three IB Global Politics teachers at the middle high school. The new change in curriculum for the 11th graders is very exciting for us and for the school overall. And we are excited to talk about an overnight trip to New York City in regards to the curriculum that we're going through this year and moving forward. I went with passports.com. There they are. And it's making things a lot easier. And tonight I just want to go through exactly what Passports has to offer. And I've been in touch with their rep over the last few months about exactly how everything goes according to these trips. Sheila, if you could just go down a little bit, you can see the educational objectives. Passports has a long history of success. I told Nita Bates this and she was really excited. I said, they do everything. We pay them, they send a guide, and they do the transportation, and it's easy from our end, but it's something that James and I and Ms. Carr kind of want to take ownership of in the years coming, and we think that this might be a good start. In regards to the trip itself, the main attraction with our educational objectives will be a visit to the UN, and on a social level, we want to get kids into an experience that they won't forget. and to be able to tie it to the curriculum that we're teaching. The Passports offers a very busy schedule. We're going to some museums. There's day 2 at the UN. And then we're going to go to Rockefeller Center and Guggenheim Museum. And Mr. Wheeler and I and Ms. Carr plan to tie some of that into curriculum as well as Ellis Island's going to be a good way to look at this through a lens of global politics as well. Passports includes 2 meals a day, hotel, travel, a tour guide, and that's about it. It's pretty much kind of put together for us, and we're excited about the possibilities. James, what do you think?
Yeah, just to add on to what Aaron said here in relation to our course specifically. So just an overview of our course. I was able to speak a little bit to our course last time I was here, I believe at the beginning of the year for one of our students, PEAs, who presented before you folks. But just for further context for our course here. So our course explores fundamental political concepts, namely such as power, equality, sustainability, and peace, in a broad range of contexts. And more specifically, like we allow our students to develop an understanding of the local, national, international, and global dimensions of political and cultural activity. And uniquely, this trip would afford students this very awesome opportunity to engage with a lot of the content and concepts that we explore in a real world context. More specifically, our trip to the UN, which we devote a lot of time and attention in exploring the international or intergovernmental organization of the UN, coupled with what Aaron had mentioned, other cultural hubs and sites like Ellis Island and so on and so forth. So again, this trip does definitely uniquely tie to our overall curriculum objectives, and as Aaron had expressed, provide students with a very unique opportunity that we hope we can continue onward as we continue to develop this very unique and wonderful course.
Thanks, James. The bare bones of it and what parents will be responsible for, parents and students, you can see on your screen there. We won't need a passport, obviously. They're responsible for lunch, any souvenirs and gifts and things. And another great thing about Passports is they offer a payment plan that we can start as soon as we can, where families can do a monthly payment to build up to the overall payment when the trip happens in spring of 24. The big overall price is down. One more slide, I believe. There we go. So on April 20th, there's no airfare, obviously. The program cost overall is $2,079, but with an early enrollment discount, they can get it down to $1,879. And again, it's bypassing the school. They're going to be paying Passports directly rather than us having to go and handle that. We are planning doing some fundraisers for maybe kids that can't meet that price line. I asked Passports about that. They said when we do a fundraiser, we would write a check to them and then tell them where to disperse it in regards to different accounts through the students. I think that might be the last one. So as we go, oh, there it is. And then it's easy for students and parents to enroll. It's an online thing. There's no going around signing stuff and paying schools. It's right to them. So quite easy.
Dr. Allen,
Move approval with the usual provisos.
is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
And I have to say, there's an old French expression, the more things change, the more they stay the same. I did this same exact trip in 1955. Rockefeller Center, the UN.
How many days a week have we gone? The whole week?
4 days.
Okay, it's been,
Itinerary is here.
any further, yes?
How many
Seb?
students would be going?
Right now, we're planning that price is based on 20 students. We want to first offer it to, we have a SL and HL level. We want to offer it to HL levels first to boost enrollment in HL global politics and to get that motivation too. And then once that fills up, we'll offer it to any juniors that might want to come. But we feel confident we'll fill it with 20. That would also bring 3. It's 1 chaperone per 6 students go for free. So that would be 3 to 4 chaperones depending.
Great, thank you.
Any further questions?
Can I ask a question about
Yep,
how
Ned,
much
go ahead.
time are you spending on the situation in Europe now?
You talking about
class?
curriculum wise?
Yeah, Ukraine. and-
James, can you speak to that? James is teaching it this trimester. I'm teaching it first and third.
Yeah, so that's a great question there. So again, as I had mentioned, we explore various domains within IB global politics, such as peace and conflict, coupled with aspects such as human rights, power, sovereignty, legitimacy. And we center those concepts around case studies. So real concrete examples for students to apply these concepts in a real world context. So we have devoted a fair amount of time, namely with the Russo-Ukrainian crisis that's presently happening, applying our understanding of power, sovereignty, and legitimacy, and peace and conflict specifically to that one. Along with that, we've explored various other case studies outside of Europe, such as in Asia, Africa, Latin America, and so on and so forth. So we've devoted a fair amount of time, especially with conversations about the European Union, the UN, along with intergovernmental organizations. So yeah, lots of exploration with manifestations of all the different concepts we've been exploring around the world at local, regional, and international levels.
One more question.
Not a problem. Go ahead.
Have you given a lot of time to the way the world treats women all over the world?
I apologize. Can you repeat the question?
Have you given a lot of attention to the way women are treated all over the world?
Yeah, so that's a great. So speaking to that, we're just coming off of our human rights unit. So we had lots of conversation about, gender equity, along with representation of other various groups across the board, both internationally, nationally. So yeah, there's been a lot of discourse with our students about big conversations such as representation of various groups in the capacity of human rights, for an example.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Seeing and hearing no other questions, roll call, please.
Dr. Allen,
Yes.
Mr. Marsh,
Yes.
Mr. Deschamps.
Yes.
Mr. Willannon,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Ms. Garvey,
Yes.
Ms. Cartier,
Yes.
Mrs. Chamberlain,
Yes.
Ms. Cormier,
Yes.
Mr. McDonald,
Yes.
Mr. Wiggler,
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson,
Yes.
Mr. Nutter,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Yes, unanimously.
And next item for approval is a 10-day ROTC trip to Germany, Switzerland, and Italy during April vacation 2024. Captain.
I have a little handout if you'd like to go ahead and you can peruse that at your leisure, if you like. Thank you very much for having me here this evening. I appreciate it. I'm no stranger to coming over and asking for these trips. I've taken kids to Pearl Harbor on 2 occasions in 2012, 2016. You were gracious enough to let me take them for 10 or 11 days to Paris, Normandy, and London, 2018, and then last year, 2022, we went to Iceland for 8 days. I highly recommend any of those destinations. But before you lose your youth, as it's approaching me very quickly, go to Iceland as soon as you can, and before the price goes up any higher. It's just a great place to go. The kids all had a terrific time and learned a whole lot. Just to let you know what's going on over there now in ROTC for just a couple of seconds. We finished our dining in back in January. And tomorrow night, we have our ROTC ball and our lock-in, our ninth year doing a lock-in. The cadets have been preparing for that for about the last month and a half. And so we're all set. They all left before too late this afternoon, about 3 o'clock. So we must have done something right. They're all ready to go and put on their finery for tomorrow. You'll be getting an invitation soon from us to attend our April 7th award ceremony, farewell to seniors, and change of command. And I'd love to have all of you come. I'll reserve a seat for you. But tonight I'm here for this trip. And this is not Disneyland or Disney World. Okay, it's also the second slide. Don't worry about going back to the first one, ma'am. It's just fine the way it is. We picked Explorica. We've done EF travel, as many folks have. But I competed this company against EF over the last 6 months. Did a review study of them, and EF does a great tour. Explorica gave me everything EF gave me, and then some, and then almost $500 less. And their reputation is equally as good. And it's nice to see that somebody has chosen Passports, which has also dogged us for quite some time. But we chose Explorica, and I think for all the right reasons, and I'll show you some of those as we go through. If you do the next slide for me, this is Germany, Switzerland, and Italy, scheduled for the 12th of April. That may slide a day or two, and coming back on the 21st, which means we might miss a day of school. The cadets are great about coming back no matter what hour of the day and being at school the very next day if that's what it requires. That's their appointed place of duty. They understand that. The school's more important than anything, and so they'll be there. The next slide, please. Lieutenant and I, as you know, combined have been in the Navy for over 50 years and traveled extensively. We really appreciate domestic travel, but international travel is just a whole new educational experience for the kids. They come back absolutely changed. My best story on that is when we went to Normandy. We visited Utah Beach and Omaha Beach, the two major beaches that Americans assaulted during D-Day in 1944. They walked out on the beach and they saw a child playing with a dog and another child flying a kite on territory that had been occupied by the Nazis. And they understood immediately that that's why we go to war, to free people and to keep people free. They came back and wrote a couple of speeches, and I presented them both. They delivered them both at the Memorial Day Assembly. So they get what international travel is all about. We prep them well, and then and they always come through. We can go on to the next one if we could, please. Okay, these are the benefits of educational travel, which I just got through explaining. So we can go to the next one, ma'am. This is the itinerary. You can see the itinerary right there in front of you. Please don't ask me to pronounce all those German names. That's not my expertise. But I have researched each and every one of the things on this particular trip. And you can see from the charts, a little bit small, there, you can see it better on your handout. But if you go to the next one, ma'am, this is the itinerary where we fly into Frankfurt and head off to Rothenburg. And then from there into Munich, which is one of the major places that we want to go ahead and see. You can take a look there. We'll see we'll visit a BMW plant, which I think will be very exciting for the kids. We have already briefed this, by the way, to the kids and to their interested parents, just to let you know. We went over a lot of these different places. I think one of the most important places that the kids need to see is the Olympic Stadium, made famous, unfortunately, in 1972 for not the best reasons, but they need to get an appreciation for that. And they need to get appreciation for that last bullet on their Dachau. I know that when I took them to Omaha Beach and then the American Cemetery, which overlooks Omaha Beach, they were struck dramatically with what they saw at that cemetery. There's no cemetery here that I'm aware of, but there is a sculpture there that really tells the story of the persecution of the Jews during World War II. And I think that them experiencing this will change them tremendously, and they'll have a greater appreciation again for what Americans do and what our allies do with us. The next slide, ma'am. We go from Munich to Venice via Innsbruck, Austria. Just a little stop by, get your passport stamped, and have some lunch, and then on to Venice. Those are pictures of Venice on the right-hand side there. We'll be visiting St. Mark's Square and St. Mark's Basilica. There was no gondola ride in there, so I said, Explorica, EF's got a gondola ride, and at no extra expense, we got a gondola ride. Can't imagine going there without doing that. Going to a glass blowing factory there for a demonstration. Don't know if the kids can afford to buy any of that Venetian glass. However, it'll be a good experience for them to see that. We'll spend a couple of nights there in Venice, and then we'll head off to Lucerne. They were going to take us into Verona, you know, all of you, I'm sure, have studied Shakespeare. We were going to reenact Romeo and Juliet. However, I said, I think we can give them a better experience. And we asked them to not go through Verona, but take us to Lake Como instead, Como, and the Bellagio, not the one out in Las Vegas. So again, at no extra cost and no expensive time, they inserted those into our tour. We'll head into Lucerne. If you next one, ma'am. Thank you. The famous bridge goes across the lake. We'll be walking across that, going to a fondue dinner. It will also be taking a cable car up Mount Pilatus, one of the Alps, which is spectacular views and all. From Lucerne, we'll travel through the Black Forest to Heidelberg for a cuckoo clock demonstration. Pretty much had enough of those in my life. The lady that moved into our house, to a house right next to us when I was growing up, was from Germany, and her side hustle was selling cuckoo clocks. Hundreds of cuckoo clocks. And so I would walk into the house on the top of the hour and they'd all go off on the walls. I can still remember that quite well. But we're doing cuckoo clocks demonstrations, and we'll visit the Heidelberg castle there, which is in disrepair. It won't be repaired, but they have this magnificent vat for wine that's made out of 130 oak trees and holds 60,000 gallons of wine, which is as much as the plane that I flew in the Navy could hold. So quite a tremendous amount. I think they'll get a good experience. The university there sounds like, why would you go to a university? One of the highlights of our Iceland trip was a university tour. It was just an hour long. Remember that? We got a Kahoot test at the end of our tour. The kids were fascinated by it. And half a dozen of them said, I want to go ahead and do a tour abroad if I go to college. And perhaps they will, perhaps they won't. I did beat you in the Kahoot test. I know that. Next, please. This is what's included. You can see that the round trip, all on tour transportation, the accommodation is 3 or 4 to a room. Our experience with the EF was 3 to a room. Full breakfast daily and a dinner daily. Lunch is on them. The entrance fees are all taken care of. Guiding, sightseeing, full-time professional tour director, et cetera, and so on. The next slide will tell you what's not covered. Okay, and that is the passports, travel to and from the airport. I have a plan for that. What I do is the kids have to pay that price that's on the very last slide. And I then charge them an additional $200. I also, for every kid that you get to go on the trip, the company gives you a certain amount of money. I can't keep that. It's not ethical, right?
Correct.
Right.
I turn it over and put it into the student activity fund. And then any additional expenses on the tour, the kids don't have to pay for those, like extra excursions, pop-up excursions, travel to and from, baggage fees, things like that. Okay, so what they pay is what they pay. In fact, on some of the trips, I've even had to write refund checks, $80, $130 and stuff like that. So I think we're pretty good stewards of their money. Tips, I take that out of that money for the tour director and the bus drivers, et cetera. And then the other money that they have to supply is for their lunches, which they have to pay. Snacks. The first thing the kid does when they get off the bus is not go to the head. It's not go to the museum to see the art or whatever it is. They go right to get monster drinks and junk food. Nothing you can do about it. So they'll have to budget their money with that. But souvenirs as well, they have to go ahead and pay for. About $50 a day is the estimate on a European trip. I've already encouraged the parents to give limited cards and limited expense accounts so that nobody buys $706 Louis Vuitton sneakers like happened in London. Next, please. They do have an insurance plan. They have 2 different insurance plans, one for $16 a day, one for $24 a day. I won't go into that except to say The $24 a day allows them to go ahead and cancel for any reason whatsoever up to 48 hours before, and that gives them a guaranteed 75% of whatever they paid in back. The other one, and that needs to be paid within the first 14 days of enrolling in the program. The other one is a $16 a day insurance policy, which over time will lessen the amount of money that they'll get back if they go ahead and cancel. Next one, please. Academic credit, this is a lot of time and extra money for them to go ahead and pay, so we don't pay much attention to this. However, each of the cadets that goes on this trip will have to present a 5 to 7 minute presentation to the rest of the group that's going about some aspect of the trip. I'll write up a list of 60 or so items that they can go ahead and pick from that they will experience on the trip. And that way they'll have some kind of an idea where they're going and what they're going to learn and all that. So they won't get a half a credit for this or that, and they won't have to pay the extra money. Next, please. Okay. Fundraising and financial assistance, that is available through the company, that they have a fundraising page. I don't do any fundraising for this trip. What I do is I give them a letter that has worked for many cadets in the past. The letter goes something like this. It says, "Dear rich uncle or aunt or grandmother, as you know, I am a NJRTC cadet at Quabbin Regional High School, and I had this wonderful opportunity to take a trip to Europe, and we're going to see these things and learn about this. If you would like to sponsor me, I would surely appreciate it. Minimum $1,000. No, anyway. So that I make that available to them. Some use it and some don't. I've had a couple of kids pay their entire way to Hawaii and back using that letter. Next one, please. And this is the last line. This is the number that you really want to know down the bottom there is 3646. All excursions are already included. That the only thing that's not included in that price is the insurance, but either $16 a day or $24 a day. So that's my pitch for this trip to Germany, Switzerland, and Italy.
Again, Dr. Allen,
Yep, move approval with the usual provisos.
second. And there's a second. Any further comments, questions?
I got a comment.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I see you're going to Rottenburg. When I visited there, I have to say, was one of the strangest experiences ever. It was the day after the Iron Curtain fell. And we started to go up over this hill, and there's a big sign, "No American military personnel beyond this point." You go over the hill, and there's the barbed wire. There's the what do you call them? The houses up, you know,
Towers?
Watchtowers.
Watchtowers.
guard towers and all that. And there wasn't a single person, not a single dog, not a thing was there. And I'm gonna tell you, that was somewhere between spooky and strange. That's the kind of stuff that these kids will
We'll have
say.
access.
And Rottenburg's a great town.
Yeah, I think this is a great trip. These cities, I've been to a lot of them. They're great cities. The offshoots are good. I'm sure you know, because you've probably been Dachau, not one of the concentration camps that's been written about as others have been. Still a very raw and emotional experience. I know some kids will need to probably decompress after that. I know you guys will be able to appreciate that and take care of it, but that's it's still a tough.
I encourage the
tough,
kids
important
to
place.
allow the feelings to come in, you know? When you stand on Utah Beach and Omaha Beach at the American Cemetery or the German cemetery at Normandy, just sit there and think about what they are experiencing at the moment and just let it sink in. And let it just feel what you feel. Give them some quiet time to do that. Yes, sir. I think that's important. We'll watch out for that.
Great cities though.
Walter?
I think the entire school committee would love to hear from some of your cadets when they come back. Tell us how they.
Yes, sir. I'll make sure that happens.
Yes, sir.
It's a great point. Fantastic. As you have done in the past as well, we truly appreciate hearing back. And we are, I know, not only are we grateful for your leadership and your selection of where to go.
Thank you.
Any further comments from school committee members? Seeing and hearing none, roll call, please.
Dr. Allen,
Yes.
Mr. Marsh,
Yes.
Mr. Deschamps.
Yes.
Mr. Lynn,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
yes,
Ms. Garvey,
Yes.
Ms. Cartier,
Yes.
Mrs. Chamberlain,
Yes.
Ms. Cormier,
Yes.
Mr. McDonald,
Yes.
Mr. Wiggler,
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson,
Yes.
Mr. Nutter,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Thank you, Captain.
Thank you. And if I could say, the budgeters at the Pentagon would benefit greatly from Cheryl Duvall. Don't volunteer. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Again, thank you for the adjustment on the calendar for the trips. Administrative report, superintendent of schools, Dr. Muir.
I'm just going to pull up the report in the drive. Give us 1 second. There it is. We will be brief because we recognize this is a lengthy meeting. My report really, my section of the report really focuses mostly on the strategic planning process. We anticipate having a strategic plan to present to the school committee at your April meeting. We have a scheduled community meeting with all of the stakeholders who launched the process early in January. We will be reconvening that group next week on March 16th for a process where they will review the work that has been done, and mostly by the administrative team. And at the conclusion of that meeting on March 16th, we will finalize the plan and bring it forth to the school committee for approval at your April meeting. We're still working on the website. Our goal is to launch that in June. We have an intensive process taking place right now where all of the content is being gathered by various district administrators, and Therese Salvador, our communication specialist, and Andrew Walsh will be working between April 1st and May 1st to get that content ready to go up. When they have access to the website on May 1st, they will be working to make sure that that is all ready to launch in June. So we're hoping for a June launch. We think we're on track for that, but there's a lot of work to do in the interim by not only Therese and Andrew, but by district administrators, school-based administrators, and other district leaders. So we're working diligently on that, and we're very, very excited to finally get that launched. And as Cheryl mentioned earlier, we still have many open positions in the school district. It's an ongoing challenge for us, and the Hubbardston principal search is underway. I believe interviews are beginning tomorrow night, and we hope to be announcing the new principal for Hubbardston Center School very soon. And if there aren't any questions, we will move to Directors of Teaching, Learning, and Support, Colleen and Joe. I will go through your part of the report if you would like to speak to it.
Sure. We'll just highlight a couple things. So with the arrival of the spring, we start thinking forward to summer and next school year. So just letting everyone know that we've sent letters out to incoming kindergarten families. We're starting our registration process. We're planning for all our transitions and our informational nights, our step-up days, our recognition nights. We do plan to have a summer program again this year. Last year, you remember we had a STEM program at the middle school and at Ruggles Lane. It ran in conjunction with our ESY program. So many of the students that attended that also came to our program in the afternoon. Something that I just really, we have such amazing educators. I just want to thank the teachers that came tonight that are working on trips for our students. It's clear that they're very engaged and committed to our district. And I really have to give a shout out to a team of teachers who Saturday, they're taking 6 students to UMass Amherst for a day called Transforming Education for Social Justice. I put a link in the report, so if you wanted to check that out, it's a full day workshop that's geared towards students. They have guest speakers. There's a rapper that's going to be there. And Shannon Harris, who is one of our adjustments counselor, is going to be the lead educator on this. Some students from our Clear the Air group, as well as some other students, are going to attend, again, full day session on Saturday. We also have some other teachers continuing great work with our culturally and linguistically responsive teaching and learning. We've been talking a lot about that, but I just want to recognize that they had some intensive coaching from an expert, and she spent 2 days with them and was so excited by the progress in a short amount of time, and said she really believes we have the right people at the table doing this work, and that she believes we'll be able to expand it amongst all of our staff as we go forward with more coaching. And I think Joe wants to talk a little bit about technology integration.
Well, before you do that, I have a comment to add. The Center for Racial Justice at UMass a year or two ago was having a big symposium, and they had some students that they wanted to come in on a panel there. And one of the panel members was, Greg, was it Mia Duclos? Is that her name?
Mia Duclos, yes.
Yeah, so one of our kids, who's a middle school child, was on this panel with college students and adults, and did a great job.
Yes, I remember that. We're very excited. And the students actually range in age from 6th graders all the way up to 12th graders. We wanted to offer the opportunity to our seniors who've been really committed to the work, but also to prepare our younger students to lead the work moving forward.
So I just wanted to give a quick update on the work that our technology integration specialists have been doing in the middle high school and in the elementary schools. They've been working hard with teachers to help them continue developing and deepening their practice around the use of technology as a part of daily instruction. They've been partnering with classroom teachers to co-teach lessons and support the use of technology as they teach alongside the teachers, but they also have been coaching and providing feedback to teachers, leading professional development, and developing resources for the teachers to use in an ongoing way when maybe they can't be present in the classroom. So that includes things like creating websites with technology enhanced lessons and supporting project-based learning in our new ELA curriculum, or research and inquiry projects, I should say, in our new ELA curriculum. So they've been doing a lot of great work, and I just wanted to make sure I gave you an update on some of the things they've been doing.
All right, moving on, Dr. Campione, Board Director of Student Services report.
Hi, thank you. I'll just touch on a couple of things. Our next subcommittee, Student Services Subcommittee, is the 13th of April, which is right before the school committee meeting. So I'm sure that Chairman Thompson will get me some agenda items soon, and we will meet then, and anyone's welcome to attend. And I'll also touch on, I know Mrs. Duval mentioned in her report about our unified teams, and she referenced they were athletic teams for students with disabilities, and they are, but they're also teams for students without disabilities. So like our track team and our basketball team have students with disabilities as well as typical students on the teams as well. They partner together, they support and help each other. And it creates a very nice social opportunity for many of our students. So track is starting. We're excited that the coaching positions are posted. So we should be getting the rosters for track very soon. And this winter we toyed with the bocce team, and we're definitely going to go ahead with that so that we'll have a winter sport next year. Many parents after basketball this fall were like, what do you have for the winter? And we really didn't have anything until track in the spring. So next year we will have fall basketball unified team. We will have winter bocce team unified, as well as spring track for students. And it's just a wonderful opportunity to watch students, to feel good about progress, but not to minimize, we have a wonderful athletic program here at Quabbin, but these programs, even the athletic director, Mr. Mivel, will tell you it's just something a little bit different and a little bit special. And of course, at Quabbin, we do it better than anyone else. So thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight.
Thank you.
I'll just point out there's lots of additional information in this report that is not being spoken to. So please, please take a look at that if you can, because there really is a lot happening in the district in all of our departments. Mr. Walsh, would you like to speak to Director of Technology report?
Yep. So the security system at the central office in the high school, the vendor came out and finished out some of the punch list. There's still a couple of things that have to be taken care of, but they are working on that. We did receive finally the change order for the additional cameras to fill in some blank spots. So we're currently vetting that, and hopefully we can get that out to the vendor within the next week. The webpage I'm going to skip over because Dr. Muir already talked about it. The district did apply for and was received acceptance to the cybersecurity, 2023 Municipal Cybersecurity Awareness Grant Program. What that is it is end user training on the importance of cybersecurity and periodic testing of our knowledge and practices through things such as email phishing tests and an overview of our system. So I'm really excited to start that within the next month. And since our last school committee meeting, we have closed 190 user tickets for a total of 2,029 for the school year. And that's all I have tonight.
Thank you, Andrew. And Director of Administrative Services.
I think I'll take the lead of my fellow directors here and skip over a lot of this that you can read. As usual, I provide for you a lot of the projects that have been happening in our schools by our buildings and grounds team. One thing that I do want to spend some time on that I mentioned earlier is the chiller system update. So Mr. Clark provided me with two reports, an overview and a very detailed. I went with the overview here. So our chiller has steadily been increasing the number of repairs necessary over the last several years. At this point, the cost of the repair and an installation of the full system, we're wondering, is it worth doing a repair at this time? So he's been vetting a couple of different proposals. And he and Mr. Coppolino, who have worked on this chiller for a number of years, they're trying to decide, is it worth doing the repair, of which a third of the half of the cost is the Freon to load back into it. And if something goes wrong, that Freon goes right into the air. Or is it better to just get through May and June, which is usually the top 2 months that the chiller is working, and then hopefully get a replacement in before kids get back to school. But it's going to be a very large project. I think at this point, the quote is over $400,000 to replace that unit, something that we haven't done a project of that size in quite some time. You can read through the other projects that are going on in the school. We're keeping up with preventative maintenance so that our systems can keep with us longer. In school nutrition, the director applied for and received a grant to purchase a combi oven for the Oakham Center School, which is fantastic. The grant does not cover the whole cost, and the grants do not cover electrical or plumbing necessary to get the unit going, but we're glad that we're able to receive that grant. And she also provided a picture of the new Q and the Panther that's in the middle high school cafeteria right now. As usual, I provide an update of where we are with the fundraising for the press box. I mentioned that in the budget report. $16,413 has been raised so far. And the grant report that I mentioned is here. There were no new grants from the last report. The last part is our warrants. Since our last school committee warrant meeting, payroll warrants bi-weekly 17 and 18 were released, and weekly warrants 34, 35, and 36. And in accounts payable, 52B, 53FQ, 54A, 55H, 57B and 58FQ. If you're wondering where 56 is, it's still being worked on. That's all I have.
No questions? Thank you.
We're all electronic now, both accounts payable and payroll.
I know you're very happy with that, aren't
I'm
you?
very happy with that. I actually did it on this. It's great.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And we have quite a, we have a log, so everything is right on that email that you send back. We know when we sent it to you, we know when to get back. We knew that it would know that it's you that actually
Because I'm
signed
not
it.
keeping anything at home anymore. It's all with you.
Great.
Fantastic.
Mr. Myville is not with us this evening, but you can see that he has updated you, really looking forward to our spring athletics season. And positions have been posted for coaches, and he's anticipating well over 300 students participating in spring athletics. So that's very exciting. And he's got some dates in here and lists of the teams that we will be fielding in the spring. And also, as always, a link to the spring schedules. We've added a new section to our report for the Director of Guidance for External Partnerships. And this actually was a recommendation from a school committee member thinking about, sort of wanting to know the work. This is a new position for us. Mr. Devine holds that position, and I thought it was a wonderful suggestion to make his work. He's doing very, very important work for us. But we wanted to make that work visible and continue to update you as to what that work is. Some of that work is happening sort of in real time, but a lot of the work is really foundational work for programs that we hope to build in the future. So there's a balance, and Greg can speak to those things, and this will be a monthly report as well.
So I'll try to be brief. There's, as you talked about foundational things, there's some things that are upcoming that we'll talk about in the months moving forward. But just a few things I want to let you know that's happening. Our work-based learning program, which is our internship program. In our second trimester, we have 20 students that are participating in that. Most of them are working within the district for the district, but we have students working outside of the district at places like the town of New Braintree, State Senator Ann Goby's office, the dance studio, and the construction industry. So 20% of our kids is a little bit over 10% of the senior class. So right now we have a good number of kids doing that. And in the fall, in the third trimester, we have right now 22 students scheduled to continue in work-based learning. As far as the innovation pathways, I work in support of the innovation pathways department, helping them communicate with businesses, to get resources for them, and to make connections with businesses and support that. One of the things that I work with Chris Salvador and Joe Wyman on is on February 16th, we had a job fair here at the school for all 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. We also invited post-grad kids to come to that. And we had over 30 different employers or career potential organizations here in the building that day that the students could reach out to, and they ranged everything from Stair Tools, FlexCon, the Boy Scouts, to Janine's Frosty of Ware. We had UMass Memorial Health Services reached out to us. We had the Department of Corrections from the state was here. And there's a whole list that's there that you can see in the report. We also, what was really kind of nice, Mass Hire, who we work really closely with and supported us with that, has talked to other high schools about us, and they let the faculty from Clinton High School know that we were having a job fair, and we were able to invite faculty from Clinton High School to come and see what was happening here at Quabbin, and they were going to take that back to try to kind of mimic some of the programming that we have here. In terms of the post-grad support, I work really closely with the post-grad students, helping them to get learning sites, work-based learning sites for those students. Over the course of the year, we've done a number of new sites. We have students now in internships at places like Hampshire Lumber, J&J Restaurant, we've had at Heaven's Harvest Farm. Our students have a lot of different opportunities through that, and now we're starting to find like the young lady that we have that's working at J&J Restaurant was able to come fill out her W-4 form, and they're going to start paying her, and now she's having a paid internship through that. So we're developing relationship with local businesses to give our students between 18 and 22 a lot of opportunities. I'm also working on supporting them in classroom learning around social emotional curriculum. They're going to start doing some work. They have started doing some work with that. The curriculum that the district has purchased. They're starting to implement that there. And I'm developing a program to help them understand career exploration through some of the state websites. The state offers some really interesting websites in state hiring, and I looked at it just yesterday. Right now, the state of Massachusetts has over 1,600 jobs posted. And they range everywhere from professors at universities to laundress or launderers, sorry. You know, that some of our kids could find out how do you go about getting a state job, and we're working with those kids on that. I work to organize and oversee the VHS work, the virtual high school. We have 12 students that are taking AP STEM courses through virtual high school at, here at Quabbin. We help them in terms of, I'm there to help them and oversee them and make sure that they have the resources that they need, that they have the time that they need, that they have the space that they need, and that they have the support that they need in terms of their work there. And the last thing that I'm going to talk about really quickly is the superintendent and I had a conversation a couple weeks ago, and she asked me to start to look into getting information from students that have exited the district in the past year. I sent out a survey to the families of students, of school choice students in particular, that have left the district since August. And I got some responses back to that, and I'm going to start making phone calls to follow up to find out why are student choice students, why are any of our students potentially leaving our district to go to other places, to find out how we can inform our decision making to support, students in our district. And again, there's a lot of things going on in external partnerships, and we continue to work in a lot of different directions. And I look forward to being able to share more and more with you in the coming months. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that concludes our school committee report.
Good. Thank you very much. Back on the agenda, Teacher Advisory Council, have it on tonight?
No, it's not.
Student Advisory, we said because it was a late night, we didn't have any students this month. Subcommittee reports, administrative review.
Is that me?
Yep.
Oh, sorry. No report, obviously.
It's okay. No, nothing at this time. Okay, I was on it. But we already did budget. Central office is all set. Collective bargaining.
Ongoing. We're still negotiating just with the QRTA at this point, and it's ongoing. Just to reinforce what Mark said and what the captain said, we have our committee has a tremendous amount of support in the presence of Dr. Muir, Cheryl, Nancy Landry, Colleen Muha, and Joe Wyman. They provide knowledge, support, guidance, and insight that really helps us out. And I just want to thank them at this point for helping us out and with us.
Thank you. Building and grounds.
No, nothing.
Policy and review and reform.
Yeah, we got a few things. First thing is housekeeping, I guess. Policy JICFB bullying, take from the table and vote into action here. I so move.
Is there a second? Lee seconded. Any further comments or questions? School committee member? Roll call.
Dr. Allen,
Yes.
Mr. Marsh,
Yes.
Mr. Deschamps.
Yes.
Mr. Lannon.
Yep.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Ms. Garvey,
Yes.
Ms. Cartier,
Yes.
Mrs. Chamberlain,
Yes.
Ms. Cormier,
Yes.
Mr. McDonald,
Yes.
Mr. Wiggler,
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson,
Yes.
Mr. Nutter,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Okay. We've been beating our heads against the wall here on this school facility use regulation. As a committee, we really want to open the schools up to the townsfolk and people that can use as much as possible. But it's just not working out. Cheryl has come up with an excellent chart here to fill in. And we as a district, the last meeting or 2 meetings back, I'd asked the superintendent and Cheryl, get together, give us something that you jointly agree on. And what they jointly agree on is the policy we have now. If a group is going to come in and use our facilities, they need to show $1 million insurance policy. What's that?
3 million.
No,
$1 million. $1 million.
Yes. So that's where we are. And ultimately, that's where we're gonna remain. It just puts us in too much risk in these litigious days of having people come in and not caring properly for our facilities, or maintaining that they've been injured or hurt or disturbed or in some way or fashion or whatever. And so ultimately, we're going to leave that one as it is. And that's the combined opinion of all of us on the policy. Academic guide. This was really interesting. There's some courses added, there's some courses taken away. There's some streamlining, but basically it's students don't sign up for them, they're not in here. We don't have a teacher can teach it, it's not in here. If technology or content has moved along and it needs to move along with that, the old one's out, the new one's in. But I assume you all have this, and there's a couple of things I want to highlight. We were concerned some years ago about, what about the advanced students? What about those who are going to go on and we had maybe 2 or 3 AP courses. Today, we have somewhere between 18 and 20 AP and IB. Now that shows real effort and putting what we need in there for the good kids. I mean, the academically gifted as well as the others, so that they can go on. And I know when we put IB in, it was, well, it's going to help all kids. And that's so, but I think it balances a little bit more toward the really good students. Here's an interesting question. You know what we have for foreign language? And I won't ask members on the Review and Reform Committee. We have Spanish. We have French. What's the third one?
ASL. American Sign Language.
That's right. Sign language. And that seems to be quite well subscribed to the point where we may need to be adding some more teaching staff. I found that one really interesting. And the overall impact, there's 5 bullets here, and I want to read one to you. Increasing opportunity for higher level classes to run. The overall impact, increasing opportunity for higher level classes to run. That's this kind of school we want. We look after all of our kids, but we hear reports on special ed and those, well, the higher level is important too. And that gets overlooked too often. I think you all have copies of this, but that was main thing. And the last thing I want to, I think you all probably got, I got this in the mail today. I assume you all did. This is a plethora of policies that local school committees are recommended to attend to in some way, fashion, or form by our parent organization, MASC. So I will ask that this be put on the agenda for October. Yeah, smile, smile, smile.
I did notice though that it did say some of them don't have to go to the local authority, that they're just minor
It changes.
wording changes or whatever. So that's.
I'm not saying we have to address all of these. I'm asking that you, administration, call them. And if it doesn't need to be addressed, fine. Who wants to spend time on it? If it's okay the way it is, fine, tell us. If it needs some modification, then we need to spend some time on it. Well, tell us that too. But I think if our parent organization, I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff in here on school committees and on fundraising and all kinds of junk. School committee legislative program, school committee member compensation, school committee conferences, electronic messaging by school committee. But it's just stuff that as a committee, we're remiss if we don't at least attend to it one way or the other.
So over the summer, with the policy review, look at it as well with the administration, because there is some additions, there is some deletions, and there are some others that are extremely minor. So in a way, you know, that could be like you did a few years ago when you did review, when they sent something out 4 years ago like that. It could be a great idea too.
Sure, terrific idea.
Thank you. Thank you. Just wanted to share the wealth of understanding and reading and taking it in.
I can remember talking with Sheila as I was driving back and forth up and down the hills in Vales, Maine, going through these sorts of things with her.
Yes.
See, yeah, that was about 4 years ago, yeah.
Mhm.
I remember we all had to do that. You did that.
Okay, so that's what I.
There's a vote that we got, yes.
On page 2,
Of
under
which?
Quabbin Regional School Committee, my name has been omitted. I don't know if you're trying to send a message or if.
Oh.
In the
Unintended guide.
Academic guide.
Yeah.
On the academic guide?
I will let them know that
I
happened.
double checked with Jenna just in case. I'm like, is my name not here?
Ah. Well, I would think
Certainly
then with the
apologize for-
correction,
Send them an email right now.
there's a vote to be required to approve the academic guide for the 23-24 school year.
So move.
Second. With that correction.
Yes, indeed.
Any further comment? Roll call, please.
Dr. Allen,
Yes.
Mr. Marsh,
Yes.
Mr. Deschamps,
Yes.
Mr. Willannon,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Ms. Garvey,
Yes.
Ms. Cartier,
Yes.
Mrs. Chamberlain,
Yes.
Ms. Cormier,
Yes.
Mr. McDonald,
Yes.
Mr. Wiggler,
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson,
Yes.
Mr. Nutter,
Yes.
and Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Allen. Student services,
Meeting April 13th.
13. Technology,
Nothing here.
ad hoc school district configuration.
Just quietly just not doing it.
Okay. And the superintendent search.
We have been busy. We've had 3 meetings since our last meeting. The first one was on February 16th. And we reviewed the lowest bidder and Cheryl awarded the contract to MASC to work with us for the search. So after we had that discussion, we talked about the brochures and qualifications and screening committee so that we could be prepared for our next meeting with MASC, which we had on Saturday, March 4th, but unfortunately it had to be on Zoom thanks to the weather. So we were fortunate enough, Liz LaFont met with us. We had quite a long meeting with her. We discussed a lot of things. We're also going to be working with Michael Dodge. So we expressed our timeline and kind of went over pretty much everything that we had all discussed and what we'd like to see happen. And we
discussed our brochure, which is kind of the advertisement for the position. So that was one of the first and foremost things. So we discussed the formatting and things we wanted included. We decided that the position will be posted. So I'll get into that after. The position will be posted until April 7th. That'll be the deadline. We discussed with Liz about screening committee members, and we've just has begun the work to reach out and have lottery and fill all of the requested positions that we were seeking to keep the committee under 20 people. So far, we're successful with that. I don't think we have a firm response yet, but we're planning on having an orientation with the screening committee on March 30th to kick off that work. There's also going to be a survey electronically and focus groups held. And we're expecting to present finalists to the full committee the week of May 22nd. So it's a pretty aggressive timeline that we have, and we have a lot of work to do prior to then. We did find out Northampton search should be concluded the week of March 20th, and Palmer's the week of March 27th. So MASC has been very busy with those searches as well, so that'll free up a little of their time to help devote to our search. So then we met again this evening before the full committee meeting and budget presentation. And we reviewed the draft that MASC has put together of our brochure. And we have approved it pending some changes that we all agreed upon at that meeting. And we also approved the survey questions that were proposed with some minor changes. So we're expecting that the position should be posted either tomorrow or Monday.
Where is it?
You know, I'm not.
So MASC has, they post it in various, they do it social media. They have other outlets that they post, they email to people. I know Dr. Muir gets emails all the time about superintendent openings. So they have a long list of people they email to and post to different publications.
That's organization too.
Mars, yeah.
MASS, yes.
And Mrs. Chamberlain, I did read today in an article that came across my email that Northampton announced 4 finalists last night.
Contact the other 3.
Hopefully they're watching tonight.
They haven't picked
Yeah, they haven't posted it yet.
So ours will be posted, so, you know, maybe potential candidates will pique their interest, so we'll see. So we're excited, we're glad it's moving forward. It's a very aggressive schedule that we'll have.
Yeah,
moving
that's great. You're
forward, but
moving along that quickly.
yeah, we're hopeful to still stay on our July 1st deadline if we can. As close to it.
Close to
Yep.
thereafter.
Yep. So we're excited.
So again, thank you for the work of the 6 members, Peg, Emily, David, Joanne, Deb, and Walter. Did I forget anybody?
Honestly,
No.
I cannot thank Jess enough. She has had so much going on between us meeting and having a lot going on to get this moving quickly and budget and all the other meetings. And she wasn't feeling well and she really just never misses a beat. We would just be lost without her. Thank you, Jess.
And Cheryl too, at the, like, the first
Absolutely.
meeting, Cheryl was part of that.
We'd all be lost without Jess. So it's
I know. It has definitely been a great team effort and we appreciate everyone's help.
And again, thank you for the screen, all that work that you're doing. It's rolling out. So thank you.
You're welcome.
No unfinished business. Public comment? Do we have anybody?
I don't see anything in the chat.
Any school committee concerns? Dr. Allen?
Yeah, just a couple of quick things here. I attended many of the boys and girls basketball games. Our teams weren't particularly good this year. But they were well coached. They had a plan going into each game. Usually they would hold them in shouting distance the first half, until the better ball players on the other team would take over. And I watched one of Dennis's games. And I said, Dennis, your team was outplayed. They're better players, but they were not outfought. And ultimately, those skills will last them better the rest of their life. So that I was pleased with how they did, not from a record standpoint. Evan told me that when the girls went down to Bishop Fenwick in the state playoffs, yeah, the team beat them, I think, 50-20. But he said, you know, their fans were respectful. At the end, I put my seniors in, and they took a minute or two of ovation for the seniors. They played hard, they played well, and those were really important. I got to see some of the wrestling. I know there were other things going on, I just didn't get to see them. We had a club from Germany, from Berlin, was here. I think they went home today. Basketball, they had a scrimmage, they had a pizza thing, they went and saw the Celtics play the Knicks. Blah. But still double overtime loss for those of you who will follow this. But it was great having those kids here. And the coaches, I got to spend some time with the coaches, talking with them. And our kids next year are going over there. We haven't gotten the thingy yet, but with the usual provisos. So that was good. And one other thing, I had some friends visit a couple of weeks ago. One was a professor at Jackson State in Mississippi. And we went up and spent some time with Pranima and through the school. Boy, were they impressed with our school. Didn't like the temperature outside. And they couldn't get over the fact that you could actually go in a lake with icy. Pick them snowmobiling up the region. But they really liked the school. They were very impressed. And I agree. I mean, I think we all take great pride in what we do and how we do and so forth. And it's nice to see somebody who is in the profession. And one of the things I did was I took the learning plans that all the schools put, and I saved them for my friends. And she teaches an administrative course. And she said, well, I'm going to pass these out for critique and as models to show my students in the administrative program, which I thought was kind of nice.
Thank you. Any other concerns? David.
This isn't much of a concern, but a proud parent and an appreciative school committee member and parent. The National Honor Society has to do a community service project. My daughter has picked the MS walk for various reasons, but she put together this flyer and she shared it with the Quabbin staff, and the teachers have been outpouring of support, and she has made a boatload of volunteers for this, and she's going to have money to send to the MS Society. So, but it means a lot to me. Very appreciative.
Speaks volumes of character, not only character of family, but also character of school and what is important to what children and young adults put effort into. Dr. Allen?
So in the same, I had one more.
Okay.
This is Music Week. Tony Brown caught me just outside the gym. She said Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So Tuesday was the band. And that woman has her mother's organizational skills. The band was in the gym. There was the elementary here, the middle school here, and the senior high here. And there wasn't time shuffling from here to there and whatever, you know, like you have on the stage. Go from this one to this one to this one, bang, 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 bang. Okay, parents, we wait for your kids. They're going to be there. Okay. And it was terrific. And one of the reasons I wanted to mention this was Harry Lewis played, I can recognize it, so in the Ray Vaughan Williams. And Aspen Qualls spoke to us at the band about, but those were two of the kids that were here speaking to us, I think about 2 or 3 months ago, which was great. And to see them going on, Qualls told me that she's been accepted to Rutgers and she thinks she's going to go there. So I think that was good. And Sophia Pascal was a soloist with the girls in the chorus, and her sister played the drums. And she did a great job, the older one in Dorothy. You know, from Kansas 5. I don't know what the official name is, but anyway. And tonight is the strings. Are you gonna be there, Dr. Brown? Now I gotta school. Oh, that's too bad. Okay, but anyway, this was well done, nicely organized, and there were hundreds of kids across the groups, from elementary to middle to high school.
Fantastic. Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
I just wanted to, I think tonight is your last meeting. And I wanted to, again, I know last month we made a comment that we recognized, we had to recognize, we understood the resignation, excuse me. But tonight, I think your town elections are before the next school committee. If we have an emergency meeting, absolutely, but from a time perspective, it appears to be the last. This will be your last meeting officially, unless you decide to come back in some other capacity or something like that. I really just wanted to publicly just quickly say something. I didn't know that if all the colleagues here knew that tonight was your last meeting. And I really wanted to kind of have you have the final say in regards to the school committee concern, and maybe if anybody wants to make any comments. But do you have any to say to us and what you have shared and done for over 30, or I think closer to 40 years, or as many years you've seen, been, and at with the school committee, for not only the representation as you get on the board of the school committee, but with the work you do for the Quabbin Regional School District. Over to you.
Just I've enjoyed all the meetings, all the people. And I think we have one of the best committees in the state and one of the best people up front with you, Superintendent, Cheryl, we're just very fortunate. And I was glad to be here.
How many years?
That's it.
How many years?
Somewhere around 40.
Around 40. Don't be a stranger. And if you can stay involved as you do, please do. And Peggy, did you have?
No, I was just gonna say what Dr. Allen said. I attended a couple of those programs, so there's just kudos to Tony.
Gotcha.
I've never been in the auditorium where I couldn't find a seat in a long time, so it was nice.
Those are the concerts where Tony says, please don't tell the building inspector that we're having this many people in the auditorium, because they are, it's an incredible community event, and it's one of the events that we look at as we think about our Quabbin Pride strategic plan objective, and it helps, excuse me, we strongly believe that it helps our students, elementary students, feel connected to a Quabbin district, and it certainly helps grow our involvement in our music program. And it's a tremendous undertaking for our music educators, but it is a wonderful experience year after year after year. So,
And all the parents and everybody back in the building.
absolutely.
That was just a nice feel.
It sure is.
Good. Again, Ned, thank you for everything you've done. Don't be a stranger, and reach out, and hopefully, and I know the next representative will have a hard shoes to fill, but we'll all, I would hope, have the same enthusiasm and dedication that you have given all of us.
Well, Ned's a real quality human being, as are the other members. I think that's the hallmark of this committee. We don't necessarily all have to agree on everything,
Correct.
but we all agree we're here for the kids and a good education for the kids, and we'll do what we need to cause that to happen. And boy, Ned's been terrific for a little while on the committee with me.
Is, thank you. No
Just a
request.
tiny bit.
No request for executive session for this meeting. Is there a move to adjourn?
Will we adjourn?
Mr. Ned.
Second.
Thank you.
Hey, Cheryl, I'm going to come visit you.
Are we off?